Hi, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'd like to share the mindset and the tips I personally use when it comes to artifacts in Genshin Impact. These are based on my personal experience as well as information from various Genshin Impact content creators that I agree with. Bear in mind that I will be discussing on so-called late-game artifacts, so these tips apply to you if you are vying for 5-star artifacts. Artifacts can be gained from specific domains, boss drops, and some investigate areas in the open world. The stats on these artifacts are random, which is why farming for godly or good artifacts is a tedious and time-consuming process, especially as the better artifacts can only be gained through the use of Genshin's time-gated resource known as resin. Therefore, in order to get the best value out of these artifacts, I follow a set of standards and guidelines before I use up my resources. So, tip number 1. Before actually farming any artifact, bear in mind which characters you want to farm the artifacts for or who you want to focus farming artifacts for first or at the moment. For instance, let's use a main DPS Diluc as our example throughout this video. If your main DPS is a pyro character such as Diluc and you want to farm artifacts in order to make his pyro damage higher, farming artifacts in this domain would be the best candidate. Personally, I don't refill resin with the use of primogems, and therefore I am limited to a maximum of 180 resin every day or every 24 hours. Additionally, when it comes to prioritizing where I use my resin, I prioritize EXP book or moral ley lines first, second is bosses, third is talent level of material domains, fourth is artifact domains, and lastly is weapon ascension material domains. In such manner, I can focus a day's worth of resin onto one material only, so I could easily track which material I need to farm on the next day, and so that I don't have to constantly wonder which material to farm each day, especially for the domains where the materials you can farm differ from day to day, such as the talent ascension domains. In short, specify which characters you intend to focus farming for and then move on to farming the artifacts that will enhance the characteristic or role you intend them to play. Tip number 2. As early as possible, aim for 5-star artifacts because they possess the highest base stats compared to lower star rating artifacts. Hence, I would recommend you to save your fragile resins until at least AR40 or if you can manage until AR45 before you use them to farm artifact domains. Tip number 3. Take note of the artifact set passive that suits your character's intended role. Currently, there are 2 set and 4 set passive skills for all the artifact sets in Genshin Impact. These passives are unique to each set, and they are crucial to narrowing down your choice for artifacts to focus on farming. Read on these passives and analyze whether or not your character can utilize them based on your character's skill set and, of course, your personal playstyle. Back to Diluc as our example, I intend to play him as a main DPS using Kea as the support who will apply the cryo status so that Diluc can trigger the melt reaction. This particular domain has 2 different 5-star artifact sets, the Crimson Witch of Flames and the Lava Walker. As my preferred playstyle is coupling Diluc with Kea, the Crimson Witch of Flames 4 set passive would be the best choice for me in this regard. Tip number 4. Be familiar with each artifact type's main stat. There are 5 artifact types: the flower, the plume, the sands, the goblet, and the circlet. One of each of these types can be equipped by a character. The flower and feather artifact type's main stat are constant or fixed. The flower artifacts will always have flat HP, and the plume artifacts will always have flat attack. The main stats of the other 3, the sands, the goblet, and the circlet, are randomized, but although they are randomized, there are a set or fixed choices wherein these 3 get their stats. So, for the sands, there are only 5 possible main stats. The basic 4, which are HP percentage, def percentage, attack percentage, elemental mastery, and energy recharge, where, according to the Genshin Impact Wiki fandom, the HP percent and def percent main stats have the highest chance of occurring. The Goblet artifact's main stat has the most varied pool of possible main stats, a total of 11 possible main stats. The basic 4, HP percent, def percent, attack percent, elemental mastery, or the special damage bonus percentages, namely physical, pyro, hydro, cryo, electro, geo, animo, damage bonuses, and dendro, which is still currently unavailable in the game, but it would be the 12th possible main stat once it is patched. What's special about the Goblet artifact is that these special damage bonus percentage main stats are unique to it. Therefore, it is recommended to keep or lock Goblet artifacts with damage bonus percent main stat and decent substats until you might find the need for them if they are not yet what you need, regardless of the artifact set it is included with. For instance, getting a Viridescent Venereer Goblet, which is an Anemo-focused artifact with a main stat of Pyro damage bonus percentage and decent substats, shouldn't be discarded or used as fodder artifact, but rather kept until the need arise. Further, as the Goblet artifact has the biggest pool of possible main stats, you can have this as the odd one out, such as this one with my D-Look running a 4-piece set of the Gladiator and the Goblet as the odd one out. A character can equip 5 artifacts, as it is recommended to always utilize the artifact set passives made before set or 2 set. The 5th artifact is free to be any artifact, regardless of the set it is a part of. Therefore, especially if the Goblet artifact you pick up has decent substats, it is worth keeping. Just like this one, which I'm using on D-Look, because all my other artifacts picked up are, well, not worth keeping. Lastly, the Circlet artifact has 7 possible main stats, the basic 4, HP percent, def percent, attack percent, elemental mastery, and the other 3 are unique to the Circlet, namely crit rate percent, crit damage percent, and healing bonus percent. It is recommended to keep Circlet artifacts with any of its 3 unique main stats, as crit rate percent and crit damage percent are useful to almost any character, and healing bonus percent is a valuable addition to any healer type character. Tip number 5. Know which substats are of the highest value. There are 10 possible types of substats, namely flat, HP, attack or defense, HP percent, attack percent, def percent, elemental mastery, energy recharge percent, crit rate percent, and crit damage percent. HP percent, attack percent, and def percent substats are always of a higher value than the flat counterparts. Crit rate percent and crit damage percent are always a good roll, whether the character is a support or a main damage dealer. Elemental mastery and energy recharge percent substats can be considered a good roll depending on whether your character needs it or it being the 3rd or 4th out of 4 subsets, which can make the artifact good enough to be invested on. For instance, an artifact that has flat attack, crit rate percent, crit damage percent, and elemental mastery as its 4 substats as an artifact for D-Look is a relatively good artifact already, considering the RNG mechanics that go into artifact substats. Number 6. When upgrading an artifact to level 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20, you either get a new substat if the artifact is not yet complete with 4 substats, or a random substat will be upgraded. Remember, the substat that will be upgraded is random, which brings us to tip number 7. Aim for artifacts that already have at least 3 substats. Artifacts are dropped with either 2 substats, 3 substats, or 4 substats inherent to them. The random substat upgrade happens 5 times in total, as the maximum level of a 5-star artifact is level 20. By having at least 3 substats inherent to an artifact drop, you would only waste the substat upgrade once to check out whether the artifact is a good roll in terms of its substats. This is also connected to tip number 9 later on in this video, wherein having at least 3 substats, ensure that 2 out of these 3 are what you're aiming for, and then praying to RNGs that the 4th substat which rolls out when you upgrade it to level 4 is a good substat, or at the very least, good enough. Because RNGs is not a very generous god. Tip number 8. Upgrade your artifacts only until level 4 and then decide whether to keep them or not. This no longer applies to artifacts with 4 inherent substats. This is a follow-up to tip number 7 if you have an artifact with 3 substats that you intend to check out. Leveling it up only until level 4 means making all 4 substats present, which will help you decide whether the artifact is a good roll or not. Tip number 9. Invest in an artifact with at least 3 substats that you are aiming for, and don't settle for less. As a random substat upgrade will only happen 5 times maximum, having at least 3 out of 4 stats means you are highly likely going to get an upgrade on one of the substats you actually want. Tip number 10. Take note of the main stat to substats pairing. This would mainly apply to the 3 artifacts types whose main stats are randomized, but still take note of the flower and the plume substats to be what you are aiming for your specific character. This tip is mostly relevant to support characters with unique abilities, such as Sucro's huge boost to the team's elemental mastery. As for main DPS characters, you should mostly aim for at least 3 from the following: attack percent, crit rate percent, crit damage percent, and energy recharge percent for maximum potential. Tip number 11. It is cheaper to get 2 artifacts to level 16 than to get 1 artifact to level 20. Many Genshin Impact content creators have done the math, and upgrading an artifact from level 16 to level 20 takes almost twice the amount of resources necessary to get an artifact from level 1 to level 16. Therefore, if you still have a lot of artifacts you intend to upgrade, you can get a bigger damage boost with less investment now if you upgrade all of them to level 16 first before proceeding to getting them to level 20. Tip number 12. Don't forget to farm the free fodder artifacts in the open world regularly. A lot of Genshin Impact content creators have already made comprehensive farming route guides for them, and I have personally been following one of these guides ever since I discovered it. That's it for this video, guys. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!